During emergencies, disasters, or terrorist events, it is imperative for the local resources, as well as the state and federal resources, to be able to communicate together and work alongside one another during an event. There are several important mechanisms that can be used for governmental collaboration, which would include the Incident Management System, the Incident Command System, and also the National Incident Management System, NIMS. During these incidents, it becomes so obvious that there needs to be interaction with each other in order to provide for flexible and adaptable management approaches. This happens in order to overcome the situation and the hardships that may be seen. Also, the local government, of course, are responsible for responding to their own disasters and receiving support from the local, state, and federal agencies. And again, this will depend on the type of incident and how large scale this type of incident actually may be. Local governments have to be responsible for their own needs within the first 96 hours of a disaster or an event. Also, local governments are in essence the first responders to whatever issues may be occurring within their communities. Oftentimes, federal assistance is slow to arrive and may not be deployed for several days, depending on the type of incident that is occurring. The federal government, upon arrival, does not take over immediately for the incident. The federal government, as well as the state governments, are there for support upon arrival. It is up to the local jurisdiction to make the final decision as to whether or not the intervention is needed, with the state or federal officials taking charge of the incident itself. There's an increase in both natural and human-made disasters occurring globally. Disasters will require the emergency management professional to not only have an academic background, but also have a professional background, as well as handling these types of incidents both nationally and internationally. Leadership and collaboration go hand in hand. A good leader will be able to work alongside other leaders from multiple jurisdictions, as well as other governmental agencies during the course of an event. Also working alongside many of these agencies, there's a potential to receive multiple resources and be able to create relationships for the next event. The overall command and control system for emergency management should be specifically geared towards a more collaborative approach. A good example of a collaborative approach is dealing with the volunteers, faith-based organizations, as well as those who are willing to participate in the event of an emergency from the private sector. Oftentimes, there are many egos that become involved in the way of performance management, emergency preparedness, as well as the response to the event. And this imposes the lack of collaboration and the inability to work collaboratively during the event. Those who want to be in charge of the event overall should work as a team and a unified approach in order to save lives. The National Incident Management System is able to address some of the issues, including technical issues with information management, communication, and overall poor incident management. Some of the keys to interagency collaboration and communication is dealing with flexibility. All the responding agencies obviously have policies and procedures that are already in place, but in order to become stabilized and assist during an event, it has to be understood that the benefit for the community is the top priority, and then the benefit of one person in leadership roles is the next. Some of the support functions for these agencies may have a partial capacity for the local jurisdiction, or they may become more involved in dealing with transportation or communications. Emergency management, firefighting, emergency management, and housing as well as the search and rescue, hazardous materials, and other agencies are all involved within interagency collaboration and communication. A recovery effort stems from the participation of private companies, non-governmental, and faith-based organizations. Collaboration, of course, can be stressed through coordinating the priorities, sharing resources, and entering into multi-agency agreements across borders. In essence, mutual aid agreements and partnerships may be established based on the response the natural and man-made disasters are indicated. In some cases, there may be a need for a memorandum of understanding, better known as an MOU, which is an agreement allowing resources to be allocated for the community that may be impacted by that disaster or terrorist event. Some of these events, the federal government may use many types of aids for collaboration and supporting others in their time of need, as well as including an individual public grant or assistance in order to make the recovery effort run much smoother. As part of the collaborative efforts during an event, the National Incident Management System for the federal government mandates that if there is an adoption of the incident command system for the organizational structure, this must be able to meet the needs of any size disaster that may be occurring, and also allowing personnel from a variety of agencies to either be rapidly deployed or rapidly placed within a common management structure, providing logistics and administrative support. And finally, this is being cost effective, thus eliminating the ability of duplication of efforts. The incident command system is composed of the 5 components of command, operations, planning, logistics, and administration and finance. The ICS is usually set up at the local level and oftentimes is responding for disasters when they are occurring immediately. This also promotes collaboration amongst the agencies, including the fire, police, public health, emergency services, as well as the public works. In the most basic sense, the IC identifies the incident command staff and support personnel with specific responsibilities that need to be carried out during the disaster. When the most effective and efficient emergency preparation response is dependent upon additional mechanisms other than that have been deployed from the local jurisdiction, for example, the adoption of the NIMS and the ICS, they also need to be accompanied by training, education, funding, and a shared set of goals by all agencies that are involved in this type of disaster response. Information sharing is also at the forefront in order for agencies to coordinate clearly and in order to facilitate a successful emergency response. The lack of a comprehensive emergency plan will be a key indicator on how well or how poorly the incident command will function during an emergency. At times, it'll be more difficult to gather all the necessary resources for the event for preparedness and response, but there will need to be expertise regarding the resources, the human capital, as well as the staging areas and other necessities that agencies may possess during the course of the disaster. Although the collaboration is good in theory, multi-agency and interjurisdictional emergency exercises, for example, do not fully demonstrate that agencies are able to display cooperation or operative communications. They do show that some capabilities in meeting the incident objectives and strategies were laid out initially, but there's also the need for planning for large-scale events, and that these large-scale events may be plagued with separate incident management plans, a lack of clearly understanding the unified command system, and not being able to comprehend the overall effort. One of the most supportive elements that a good leader can have during the course of an event that he or she is involved in is the concept of trust. More than anything, having a response in various locations is necessary for the successful operation to take place under the auspices of trustworthiness. On the other hand, a concept that is needed in multiple agencies are willing to share their thoughts, their ideas, their resources, as well as the information that may be pertinent to handling the emergency. Consequently, implementation of strategies and program needs are developed within the concept of trust and trustworthiness. Keeping this in mind, having trustful relationships and working alongside one another will be a very viable component in the local, state, regional, and federal security efforts. One final thought regarding collaboration and communication in regards to trust is that the anthrax attacks back in 2001 of October and November regarding the services that were rendered. Throughout the episode, there were problems according to the information and policies across all the types of geographical areas. The agencies, as well as the jurisdictional levels at this time and juncture, were unfamiliar territory for the U.S. Postal Service. And it was unfamiliar territory for the public health agencies that were responding at the same time. In essence, during a crisis event, try to understand the type of problem that is going on, respond to it rapidly, and also understand the medical implications of what may be going on with the anthrax. In order to overcome some of the areas of not understanding and incomprehensibility, working alongside one another during a crisis event is imperative for life safety as well as dealing with the crisis itself.